Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Louise Nichols. I'm a textile artist and I live in Cornwall. And the first thing I need to say is I'm really sorry how long it's taken to get this second video done. It must be at least 3.5 or 4 weeks. So I'm really sorry about that. I've had a really busy time. We had the cowslip workshop summer fair. I was going to say Christmas then, summer fair. So obviously I was busy getting ready for that. That was about 3 weeks ago. My daughter came back for a few days, and then this week I've had my dad here, and he's just gone home this morning. So I thought, right, I need to get on and get this second part of the second part of this series about the folk flower kit done. As I say, I am really sorry it's taken so long. We have got more visitors arriving. We've got my son's back home as well because he's back from uni. His girlfriend's coming to join us, Nellie, next weekend. And then we have more visitors the following week. So I can't promise how quick the next video will come out, but I will try and maybe get another one filmed next week. I have a little bit of a break in between, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, so this video is all about the couching on the folk flowers, and I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully I'll be back a little bit sooner next time. So I'm ready to start the couching now, and on your stitch diagram that comes with the kit, it's where there are these lines, it's kind of like a solid bit and then a dash. And then also where there are lines with little dashes through. So I'll explain the difference between those two. Right, so on the original one, I'd use this lovely grey that I use. It's a DMC size 8 thread. And I'm going to use that in the same place as I used it on the original piece. So down here and then sort of on these curved stems. So I'm just going to thread my needle up first, and then I will show you how I do my couching. Now, just because I do my couching this way, it doesn't mean that this is the only way to do couching. There are many ways that people do their couching. This is just the way that I've found works for me. Okay. So there's a line down the middle here, and then I'll show you one of the curved, how I do the curved stitches as well. So when it's a straight line like this, I come up where I want that couching to start. So I want to be right in the middle there. And I'm going all the way up to the base of the little bit of felt that's at the bottom of that flower. And again, about halfway, not quite halfway there we go. And what I want is just one nice straight stitch. So I'm going to tie off again on the back. So this was using this at single thickness, and I'd knotted the end. Now, because I've got some thread in there that I can continue to use, I do my knots with my needle in the thread still in the needle. So I make a loop, pass the needle through, and then I'm pulling that knot so it's right at the base there. Keep my finger on it, and then I've got a really nice neat little knot on the back, and that leaves me with a nice taut stitch ready to stitch over. Now, when I'm doing a curved couched line, same thing, single thickness, unless it states otherwise in your instructions. I don't know if there are any double lines on this. I don't think there are, actually. No. So again, you want to start where that curved couch line begins. So I'm going to do this one here. So come up through the fabric, and then I want it to end where the curve of that sort of tulip shaped flower is. And then because it's on a curve and I want to follow that shape, I take my needle out and I leave that loose. I'm going to couch this one first and then I'll come back to that one. So I've already threaded my needle up. So this will be thread number 2 in the kit, and then this is thread number 3. And this is a size 5 Finca thread, shade 1211 that I'm using. Hang on a minute, I've got a longer piece here. Let's use this one. So again, I've knotted the end. And then starting at the end where the knot is, when it's all the way down like this, one long stitch, it doesn't matter which end you start, but when it's loose on one end, I would always start at the end where the knot is. Make sure that that tail is right out the way. You could snip that down if you wanted to, but I tend to leave it just as it is, as long as it's not too long. And then I'm using my thumb just to hold that thread in place while I come up on one side and go back down on the other. Like that. And then I move along probably about 1 centimetre or so, come up on one side of the thread and back down on the other. So I keep those stitches quite tight to the side of the thread, and I'm just using my thumb loop to hold it in place. And a bit like with the thread I was stitching the felt with, I don't pull it too tight, so I'm just leaving that little stitch just to sit on top of the thread that I've laid down. Just using the tip of my needle there, look, just to push it back in. Just one more in there. Like that. Turn it over. And again, because I've got thread in there, I will knot with my needle in. Like that. And then you can just give that a little tug, make sure it's sat nice and flat, and then knot that off. And then I've got enough thread there to go and thread up and do the same here. So I'll show you that one as well while we're here. Get my needle back. So this is the one that joins the one that we've already done. So again, I'm starting just beneath that tulip shape there and going in. I'm taking it right up to the edge of that stitch line there, leaving it loose. So I've taken the needle out, so I've got a loose thread on the back there. Go back to my size 5 thread, knot the end, and then again make sure that tail's out of the way, and then use my thumb to guide it around the curve of that stem. Just going to do 3 on that little bit there. Okay, and on this one here, it's the same process. You're just doing your little stitches, as I say, about 1 centimetre apart. I tend to guess, you know, and just sort of judge it by eye. if you really want it to be equal distance, you know, if you want the stitches to be equal distances apart, you could measure it, or you can, when you've done 2 stitches, do a pen mark on your thumb, and then just use your thumb as a guide as you're going round. So I'm going to tie that off again. There's still enough there, look, to do another little curve with this grey thread. And then in between those stitches, there are little tiny stitches as well. So I'm going to use the thread that I stitched around the outside of the felt with to do those. So let me thread my needle up again. Where are we? There, that one will do. And then I'm going to knot the end of that. So this is thread 1 in the kit, thread number 1. And then I'm going to do little tiny stitches in between. So I usually fit around 3 or 4 stitches usually in between these larger stitches with the thicker thread. So I'm just going over the top again. So I go over the top, in, I've crossed over at the back so that I'm ready to start the next stitch, like that. And then just work your way all the way down. There we go. So that's all the stitching on those bits done. So that's how I do my couching. Sometimes once you've finished stitching, your thread that you've laid down might be a little bit wibbly wobbly. So what you can do is just give it a little tug and it will just straighten it out. So I'm going to go away now and stitch the rest of these curves and any straight lines that need stitching, that need couching with the thicker thread and the thin thread, and then we'll come back and I'll talk to you about just stitching with a general sewing thread over the top. Okay, so after this couching with the grey, with the thicker thread over and the number 1 thread, the next thing to do is this little bit across the tulips here. So you can see I've done most of them and I've just got enough thread left in my needle to do these last 2 down here. So this is using, if you've got the kit, it will be thread number 4, and it's like a, I don't know, lovely, not quite petrol-y blue, but it's a really nice shade. It's the same shade of blue that was in the original, on the original blue flowers, and I've kept it in this one as well. So to do this, come up on one side of the felt there, and I'm just doing a line straight across the middle of that piece of felt there, like that. And I'm going to tie that off on the back, and I've just about got enough there to do that last one. So very carefully tie another knot, make sure I don't pull the thread out of the needle, and do this last one here. I'll take the needle out now and just tie that off on the back. So that's a really nice taut stitch going across there, and then that's couched over with what will be thread number 1 in the kit. So let me get my, oh hang on, I've got a little bit, I think that's it, might not be enough there. Let me thread myself up with a little bit more. And it's just a little stitch over the top, the same as we did with the grey on there. So I'm going to pop a couple of knots in this because it's a very thin thread, and linen, this is a linen mix fabric, it tends to be have a slightly more open weave, and even with the interfacing on the back sometimes you can pull through. So a double knot, it just stops it from coming through. So I'm starting right at the end of there, and I'm just going down on the other side there, look, underneath, so I'm ready to start the next stitch like that. Ooh, try not to go into another leaf. There we go then, that's all the couching done on the little tulips over the blue. And then the next bit of couching is where on the original I'd used a pale grey. But on this one I'm going to use this sort of beigey colour. It's a yellowy beige, and I think it ties in quite nicely with these sort of almost yellowy, very pale yellow bits of felt I've got, nicer than the grey. So I'm going to change that on my, because this is my original list with all my measurements and everything written out on. So instead of it being a Finca 8 pale grey, it's now Anchor. Where do I say? Let's cross that out. It's an Anchor 8. Let's cross that out, put beige, and the shade is 392, and it'll be the same measurement because I'm only doing it in the same places as I did on the original. Okay, so I'm prepared for this one. Got my needle all threaded up ready. So I'm just going to follow where these lines are on the original. When it's a slope like this, let me show you what I do. The same as with this one actually. I just leave the thread a little bit loose. So I'm going to come up, doesn't go all the way along this one, back down there, and I'm going to take this one across the back of the fabric. So I hope you could see that. I was getting it a little bit towards me, wasn't I? And in about there. And then I'm going to take the needle out. And then couch over this. Now, the next one is a grey sewing thread. Hang on a minute, let me get some grey sewing thread. Right, okay. So I'm going to thread my smaller needle up with that grey as well. That's going to stay the same. It was grey on the original, and I'm going to use the grey again to go over this beigey brown colour. Now, if you, I don't think that tied, did it, that last one? There we go. You don't have to have such a long tail as this out the back if you don't want to. If you're worried about getting it caught up, you snip it a little bit shorter. But you see they're loose there. So what I'm going to do is I start couching over using that grey. So the grey sewing thread, it's a Gutterman thread, 7010 is the shade that I'm using. So I'm just using my thumb just to pull that thread down so it sort of follows that slope nicely there. So when you get to the end, just give that thread a little pull, and if you've got if it's sort of twisted a little bit or gone a little bit wibbly wobbly, that will just straighten it out. So I'm going to tie off the grey thread there, like that, and tie off the beigey coloured one as well. That'll only probably need one knot because it's a thicker thread. There we go. So I'm going to thread my needle back up with that. And do the rest of the shapes that need this particular couching over the top. There we go, couldn't see my needle there. Not in the end. Right, where's next? I think I'm going to do these just here next. So that's all of that light tan beigey colour all couched down now. I did forget on the previous bit there's a little bit of couching on these tulip shapes using the blue thread, which is thread number 4. So I'm going to do those now as well. So it's the same process. Come up where you want your couching to start, back down where it finishes. And when I tie these off, because it curves just a little bit, I don't pull it really tight on the back, just sort of like that. And then there's a little bit of give in it when it when it comes to, you can just pull it a little bit to curve around the shape that I'd carved into the lino before I printed it. So I'll do the same with this one. And then this thread is couched over with thread number 1, which is that pale sort of beigey grey colour. I'm organised today, look, I've got all my threads already threaded up. Right, so where is it? Oh, here, that's it. I couldn't see what I'd done then. So I'm just going to hold it, just pull it down a little bit with my thumb there, look, so it covers the line that's underneath it, and hold it in place while I stitch over it. Now the last bit of couching on here is this little line above the wing of the bird. So you can see I've done it on this side already, and then I'm going to just do this one on this side and show you that. So that is using the thread that I've used to couch over here. So these sort of creamy white dots here, it's the same thread. So in the kit it's thread number 3. So I'm going to do just one long stitch again along the top edge of the bird's wing. So from there, sort of down to just as it starts to curve around that bend there, back in there, like that. And then I'm going to take the needle out on this one and leave it loose so I can guide it around that shape as I'm stitching, because that's more of a curve than it was on those leaves. And that's using the grey thread that's used over the top of the beigey coloured thread as well. So I'll just tie a knot in the end of there, or a couple of knots, because it's a thin thread. And then I'm going to couch. I'm going to start at the end that's knotted there. Just use my thumb just to push it over so it's on the line, and then start my couching about there, and then just work my way along there, just using my thumb just to make sure it's just following that curve. So just give that a little pull as well, that thick thread, like that. Look, it just brings it into line a little bit better before you knot the back. And snip that off, and that's all the couching finished now. So the next video will be French knots, and I'll see how long the video is for that. I may do the running stitch as well, but I think French knots for the next one. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.